For more than a century, films have influenced our perceptions of ourselves and the world at its most glorious. Movies are considerably more than mere entertainment. They are an integral component of our collective culture and art, which have the ability to transcend place and time. For a small number of individuals, however, the movies are the exception, or an entirely different entity. If you are born into the film industry, they are an integral part of your family lineage, interwoven into the very fabric of your being. For Angelica Houston, whose father was the renowned director John Huston, the cinematic genre we refer to as classic was merely the background to her upbringing. Angelica's aspiration to become an actor was evident from a young age, despite her limited exposure to cinema. In 1968, while she was still an adolescent, her father offered her a role as one of the leads in his medieval epic, a journey that involved both affection and mortality. Regrettably, the film failed to generate significant revenue at the box office, and, to make matters worse, it exacerbated the tension between Angelica and her father. Angelica and her father would require time to reconcile. However, they ultimately did so. Their bond was unbreakable. John proposed to Angelica the role of May Rose in Pritz in 1985. He is honoring a dark comedy that revolves around a complex mafia family. She could not refuse the opportunity to accept the position. The outcomes were extraordinary. Angelica's career was propelled by her performance, which earned her an Academy Award. Angelica expressed a particular interest in learning about her maternal origins, specifically her mother, the performer Enrique Soma. At the age of 17, Angelica was fatally injured in an automobile accident. A loss that she continues to lament to this day. Angelica discovered solace in her grandfather, Tony Soma, a New York restaurateur, during her mother's absence. He appears to have been a charming individual, somewhat larger than life, who was also a yoga enthusiast and aspiring opera vocalist. Tony may have been particularly sympathetic to Angelica. As a result of his own profound loss, Angelica's grandmother and namesake, his first wife, passed away at the age of 43 due to pneumonia, leaving him devastated to investigate their narrative. We initiated the process by compiling a passenger manifest for a vessel that arrived in New York City on September 13, 1913. While this passenger manifest signifies their decision to immigrate as a married couple, Tony and Angelica were both from East Borough, a small municipality in northern Italy. We located additional records that indicated that Tony had previously visited the United States prior to his arrival at the age of 18. In the early 20th century, Tony's movements were not as uncommon as one might have anticipated. Over 1/3 of the Italian immigrants who immigrated to the United States made numerous transatlantic voyages in order to generate income in the United States, to return it to its place of origin. For several years, certain individuals embarked on such crossings during each season. Indeed, upon further investigation, we found that Tony was not the sole member of his family to engage in this behavior. Additionally, his spouse, Angelica, participated in the activity. As a young child, she traveled to Massachusetts and subsequently found employment at a cotton mill at the age of 13. A revelation that fundamentally altered the family's perception of her. We now knew that both of the evangelicals' ancestors had immigrated to the United States as young adults, worked tirelessly, and subsequently returned to Italy. This raised the question, why did they return to the United States? What is the reason for your return to the location where you were a juvenile laborer in a cotton factory? It appears that the answer is yes. Was that the conditions in East Borough were even more dire? The town was extremely impoverished due to the challenging climate, soil, and terrain, which made farming exceptionally challenging. Nevertheless, the majority of the population was engaged in farming, and malnutrition and even starvation were prevalent. Angelica visited as a young woman. Additionally, we acquired an understanding of the hardships that our forebears faced. We had traced Angelica Houston's maternal origins back to rural Italy, demonstrating the extreme poverty with which generations of her mother's progenitors lived. We then consulted her father's family tree. We discovered a narrative that was entirely distinct. It is the narrative of a man of privilege who is the fifth great-grandfather of Angelica. Andrew Smith passed away in Maryland in 1811, and his will contained some unexpected instructions regarding his wife, Elizabeth, and their slaves. Many white men, of course, fathered children with their slaves. However, only a small number of them acknowledged this fact, and even fewer made any attempt to free their enslaved children. We are unaware of the reason behind Angelica's ancestors' actions, and we can only speculate on the emotions that his wife, Elizabeth, experienced. Within the dreadful system of servitude, Andrew's decision may have appeared commendable. However, it was not without its consequences. His 4 siblings are of blended descent. Children were not to be granted their freedom until they reached the age of 30, which meant that they would spend their most fruitful years laboring in bondage. This was a prevalent practice at the time, and Andrew's estate records illustrated its implications in the most bleak terms possible. We were left with only one remaining inquiry. Did Andrew's descendants comply with his testamentary directives? The historical record is replete with instances of slaves who were liberated by a deceased owner, only to discover that the master's family had other plans. My guest's paper trail had now been exhausted. It was time to investigate the potential of DNA to reveal her more profound origins. We initiated the process with an admixture test, which identifies an individual's ancestral lineage over the past 500 years, with percentages delineated according to the general regions in which their ancestors resided. 2.7% Ashkenazi Jewish was an unexpected revelation in Angelica's admixture. The results of her DNA test were unexpected. It was on the brink of producing another. Upon comparing our guest genetic profiles to those of other individuals who have participated in the series, we identified 2 significant matches for Angelica, which indicate that she has relatives within her own chromosomes. She was unaware that she possessed it.